Hey guys, have you noticed that the political left is basically irrelevant now? The force that once gave us universal healthcare, workplace protections, and everything like that now argues on Twitter about how the Soviet Union did nothing wrong and why guillotines are racist. And look, I don't single videos out like that just to be like, oh, you think that everything's racist, just like what Tory would do. There's definitely an interesting academic conversation to be had there about, the aesthetics of revolution. It's more about the fact, and this will be my thesis for this video, which is that the left have become too terminally online and addicted to jargonese, and that is now inhibiting our ability to achieve electoral and general societal success. I think the most relevant example of this to me in Australia is the Victorian Socialists who ran at the last election. They've also now gone interstate, so, just insert your state name here, Socialists. I'm not going to be critiquing any of their ideological positions here, because that's not really what this is all about, but I want to critique their form. Let's start with their name, Victorian Socialists. If you have any knowledge of the last century of political events in Australia, you will know that attaching socialist to your party's name is electoral poison. Bar the Labor government of the 1940s, no movement has been successful in forming government under a socialist label, or even have successfully influenced one. I think there's a reason that so many of the left-wing figures that have been successful over the last half century, anyone from Whitlam to Bernie to Corbyn in the UK, were so successful. And it's because, for the most part, they departed from the socialist label. They understood that the McCarthyism of the 1950s, which was present all over the West, made that kind of language used during a conventional electoral campaign unviable. The recent success of Zoran Mamdani in New York, even though he himself is quite openly a democratic socialist, was made possible by the fact that he communicated policies that were not under a socialist label. They were just policies that were actively going to make the lives of people in New York easier. And this leads to my second point, which is that I think if you look at Bernie Sanders, Zoran Mamdani, and Jeremy Corbyn, they all ran with their major parties. Now, of course, there was massive internal resistance to these movements in the Democratic and the UK Labour Party respectively. But at least in Bernie's case, he was able to get the Biden administration to make significant compromises with him in order to keep that entire new base happy. And in Zoran's case, it really looks like he has become the Democratic face of New York. This is an advantage that the Socialist Party in Australia does not have. They don't have affiliations with trade unions. They don't have any formal backing groups outside of Socialist Alternative and Alliance. If I'd been talking before the 2025 election, I would have been a little bit more open to the idea of a third party, because prior to that election, it really looked like the two-party system was on its way out. But with Labor having ascended so far and the coalition seeming to, at least for now, figure out their internal disagreements, it looks like that order is here to stay, at least for the time being. So as a progressive socialist in Australia, what do I think we should do? Well, I think we have a few avenues outside of trying to establish a new major party. My first suggestion would be to join your trade union if you're able to. Now, if you're in retail, you have a choice. You can join the SDA, or you could join the RAFWU, which is a new and up-and-coming union. And if you're in construction, the choice is pretty obvious, teaching, all of that stuff. There tends to be one state by state. Go to your meetings and make your voice heard. The SDA sucks because it's occupied by people that do not care about the fundamental tenets of trade unionism, and that can be changed. My second suggestion is, when discussing politics with your family members or friends, try to keep the jargon to a minimum. Old Grammy is going to turn right the fuck off if you start talking about the plight of the proletariat and the seizing the means of production. The way you need to say it is, you need to go to your uncle who's a weirdo on Facebook and you need to tell him, I think you, in your relatively low-paying construction job, know more about how your business works than your boss does. And present to them realistic changes that they could vote for or that they could believe in to fix those problems. Now, this isn't a sure method. Some people are crazy and you're just going to have to accept that. But you have a better chance of getting through to them this way than if you just read the Communist Manifesto to them. My third and final recommendation would be to attempt to influence the institutions and the powers that be, in this case, the Australian Labor Party. I'm not necessarily suggesting you have to join the party just now, But it would definitely be worth going to branch meetings, writing to your local Labour representatives, and getting in contact with rank and file members and expressing your views. By currying favour within the Labour Party, it makes it obvious to the rank and file that should Labour attempt to pursue more bold reform, there will be backing for them to do that. Labour only backed off negative gearing reform because it was obvious by the 2019 election that there wasn't an appetite for it in the electorate. We have to make it obvious that there is an appetite for that in an electorate, in a voting bloc that can win them elections. I do urge that electoralism is not the only way that we can do this, and the other two methods that I suggested will be absolutely vital in sustaining a progressive movement in Australia. The future for the left in Australia is not in a small protest party that embraces the aesthetics of socialism from 100 years ago. It is in a sustained movement across all bounds of society, these being worker organisations, your interpersonal friendships and families, and party politics. This holistic approach is vital in ensuring that Australia remains a beacon of progressive politics across the world. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.